Hi, this is Paul Caldwell. I'm a photographer based in Little Rock, Arkansas, landscape photographer. And today I was going to spend a little time and kind of go over some of the new developments that have come out from Lee filters. Pretty significant for wide angle lenses because in the past, this is an example of a Lee wide angle ring. This is, for example, a 67 millimeter, and you can see, it's quite small. It fit the traditional 100 by 100 millimeter holders from Lee. These stopped at 82 millimeters. Anything larger than that, 86, etc., was not designed for wide angle use. These are designed to come into the lens and then actually fit behind the barrel of the lens so that you get less vignetting opportunity. Recently, though, Lee came out with a whole new series of rings, and they're all designed around the SW150, which I have a new one here, and I've also got an older one. There's really no difference. If you own a Nikon setup, the old original Lee SW150, which I've got right here, you'll notice I've added their new screen to it, their protective screen. This is the exact same unit that would ship now. The only difference is you don't get the new one comes with a fancy color band right here. So, looking at a new Lee, you see the band I was talking about here. There's really no difference. They're interchangeable. The comes with two 2mm slots. I modified this old Nikon to hold a 4mm slot because I was using a thicker polarizer at the time. That's also something I'm going to discuss in a minute. So what we have here is a standard SW150. That's been around for a while. What we have now is a series of rings that Lee came out with, and for this example I'm going to pull out the 86 millimeter. These are big rings. I mean, go back and remember the 67, massive compared to nothing. But I guess in the scenario we're talking about here, they need to be massive because they're going to support a much bigger unit. This is, again, a SW150, so it's designed for at least 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter filter. Obviously there are some tall ones that you can use also on that, which are longer in their same width. So an example of using this would be to put it on a lens like a rod and stock. This is a standard rod and stock 32, and it's threaded in the front at 86 millimeters. So to mount the ring, you just take your lens. You have to be very careful when you're doing this because it's the threading. You don't want to mess up your threads. Get a good, like I just did, get a good bite. Get it on there nice and tight. You'll know when it's on there. Now, notice this, what we've done here. We've turned a fairly big lens into a massive lens. We've also added some weight to the front of the 32 millimeter. And one thing I want to caution people on, if you own this lens and you're using this setup, be very aware of the fact that your point of weakness on this lens has always been this spot right here where the copal shutter is. This is a humongous bulbous front element which is bonded to the back with a very small copal shutter. So now we've added even more mass to this device, and so you just want to be careful when you're doing this. Not only mounting it, you want to be careful with it in the field. But moving forward, the other thing to remember is there's no cover over this now. Your lens element, outer element is totally exposed, so just be aware of that when you're in the field. The SW150 fits right over this, just like it did on the Nikon. Very familiar looking scenario here. It locks down in the back with the knob. It will not come off, unlike the smaller Lees, which you can actually push off. This is bonded down. It's screwed down. It's not going to come off, but you still get the ability to rotate it. This one's fairly tight, so I need to just use it a little bit. But the point is you can rotate it if you have a circular polarizer on the front here. What this is giving you, though, is now two 2mm slots in front of a rod and stock lens, which has a 90mm image circle, which means I can shift this in actuality about 12mm with usable image, and I should not hit any vignette from the filters. Of course, what this is going to take, and it's now safe to place this down this way because I've got enough protection from the front. You'll see the elements buried below, so I'm not going to hurt anything by doing this. I wouldn't do it on a regular basis, but for this test, I also want to go over real briefly the new Nisi, that's N-I-S-I filters that have come out. They come in a nice, this is a leather packed pouch they come in. It's padded on the inside. They've come out with an entire line of IR filters, neutral density, and they also have a polarizer. In this case, I'm showing the polarizer. This is a 150 by 150, and folks, this is glass. This is not resin. So first thing you have to be aware of is it's glass. You drop it, it's gone. These cost about $250, $225 to $250, depending on where you purchase them. On this one, you're going to see lettering on the outside. Lettering goes to the outside. And I'm just going to fit this real quick so you can see. It would just take either one of these slots. In this case, they're 2 millimeters. It's going to press right down, just like, there we go. We've mounted a polarizer. Now in this scenario, if I was using this lens and I had a sky situation I'm trying to polarize, I would possibly want to rotate it. Now on this lens, I'm very hesitant to rotate this by itself. This lens would normally be mounted to a tech camera, Arca, so the back's going to be mounted in the back of the camera. However, you still have a lot of weight up here and you can torque out this front element. So when you're rotating this device, I would definitely hold that rear element like I'm doing right here, and then just give it a little bit of twist. This one is there. This one is just new, but you can tell it goes all the way around, and of course it seems to want to go better in this direction. So I would just keep turning it, and you're going to catch the sun and find out which is the right way to polarize it. It's a little bit harder to do with a rod and stock lens because you're not looking through a viewfinder. But again, I just wanted to pass this on because this is all new technology that's been announced. It was announced at Photo Expo, and it's just now started to ship. Now the whole rig comes off. I'm going to set it down here. The ring comes off. Place the cap back on this lens and take him out of the picture just because it's a very delicate lens and it's kind of done for the show. Now we've got another lens here. In this case, we've got a Schneider 80 millimeter standard front filter thread on it, 72, so I've added 2 rings. I've had a step up from 72 to 77, and I'm going to step up again from 77 to 95. Now, obviously, you could just as easily go from 77 to 95 if you got that ring. I didn't particularly have that ring in stock, so I just wanted to, for this purpose, I would go, I'm just stepping up twice to get there. But again, the point of what I wanted to show here is now I'm going to go to the 95 ring, and it's going to go in the same way as before. It's going to catch the threads. Okay. Now I've added the same scenario to a Schneider. This is a medium format lens, but the point is this could be any 35 millimeter lens that has 77 millimeter threads. This is 72 threaded to 77. So I would say any lens that's 72, 67, 77, 82, etc. If you want to just carry one system, this is another way to go. And this guy's going to come right over the front, again, just like before, because the ring is keeping the tolerances in line. You don't have to worry about anything hitting anything because it's not going to go any further than the width of that ring. It's on there. I tighten it down. In this scenario, I'd be using this with a phase 1 camera body, so I'm looking through the lens so I can easily polarize it. I'm not anywhere near worried about the damage to this, but this lens is a lot smaller in mass, and I can turn this relatively easily. The ring, again, is locked down from the top, and that is not coming off. And as I wanted to rotate my polarizer, I would do the exact same thing as before. So again, I've been able to take one set of filters and I've crossed between 2 different kind of lenses. I've gone from a rod and stock 32 millimeter, gone to a standard medium format lens, all with one set of filters. Now, again, is that a necessary thing to do in the field? It's up to you. I'm trying to minimize the amount of weight I carry. I carry 2 cameras usually in the field with medium format and 35 millimeter. So to me, this is invaluable. I'm also a wide angle shooter, so I tend to want to have this set up because I know I'm going to have less chance of vignetting. I also like to do movements when I use tech camera lenses, and again, this is going to give you the ability to have movements and not catch the filters. So we've gone to 2 different lenses. We've used the SW150. Again, I had 2 slots in here, so I could just as easily put in another filter, which in this scenario would be a neutral density. Briefly consider Nisi also makes a series of IR-NDs for this size. They are glass also. They are IR, so they're going to prevent IR contamination. You also have the ability to look at Lee's filters, which are resin, which to me do not make any sense because resin is resin. If you're putting it in front of a $4,000 lens, kind of defeats the purpose of having that kind of a lens. And also High-Tech Firecrest is another one that's come out with this same size. So you've got a lot of filters to look from if you want to go this route. The other thing to consider when you're doing this is Lee has also come out with a nice little pouch here. This little advertisement for Lee, but I mean, I love this. This holds both the 100 by 100s or it holds the 150 by 150s. It's not going to hold the long, yeah, it actually hold the, no. It may actually hold the longer ones. I'm not sure. I haven't tried those. I don't own the grads come longer if you use grads. But the point is, you've got slots in here. If you can see that, I hope they're all felt lined. They're not going to scratch unless you get a piece of dirt in there. There's 10 slots or dividers, so you can actually hold a lot of filters. The bag doesn't zip all the way down on the sides, so it expands like an accordion, so you can get to your filters. But the beauty of this is, it can be worn around your neck in the field. So if you're standing in water or if you're working and you don't want to bring your whole bag with you, you got your filters you need right there. You can open it up. You can see what you need. You pop one in. The risk of dropping one of these is greatly reduced because I've got a bag right with me. Again, these are all glass. So once they hit the ground, they're going to be ruined. So that's the downside to glass, especially glass of this size. You know, the way you want to handle these is always from the edge when you're pulling it out. Make sure you got a good grip on it. I always go right back to the paper holder until it degrades. It's just the way I feel about these things. It keeps the scratch potential down. Put it back in the paper, and then it's going to go right inside this little bag. And I've got one slot taken up, and I've got a filter ready to use. You also have a protective sack. So what we've talked about basically is a whole new setup from Lee. You've got the ability now to use the SW150 across an entire breadth of lenses. It obviously makes sense to use this, consider using this also on some of the new telephotos. I would say if you want a filter on a telephoto, this is another option because it goes to 105. So I know it would work on, for example, the Nikon 200-500. I believe this ring will clear that lens. It's not as much a smart thing to do on a telephoto, but if you want to go that route, this is really designed for wide lenses. So again, it all goes back to this lens. This was a Lee design that goes back almost, I guess, 10 years now. Here's the old Nikon 1424 with the original Lee mount on it. I've got my old original Lee here, which I've upgraded over the years. I've got the nice plastic, non-plastic, the rubberized light guard, which is so superior, by the way, to the old one. Or I can go with the new one. They both fit, they're interchangeable. Everything about the system is rock solid. The one thing to consider, as I've said before, if you are using this setup on a rod and stock or any tech lens that's got a design like this, which has a small element and then a large element, you want to really be careful how much weight you put on the front of that. So I don't know if Rod and Stock has said this is okay to use. I know it was shown at both Linhof Studios in England sells it, and it was shown at Photo Expo with this lens on it. So, you know, I would say use at your own risk, and definitely be careful when you're putting it on and off. Don't jerk things around because that's where this lens runs into trouble, especially where this piece fits into the copal shutter. In regards to this setup, I would have no qualms about this at all. This lens is bomb-proof. I mean, if you drop it, obviously it's not, but this is a very well-made lens. It's a much shorter drop, and so you've got, you know, no issues there. The other thing I want to touch on real briefly is there's another device out from Nisi again. It looks very similar, in fact, to the SW150 holder. In fact, it's probably a nice copy. This is brand new from Nisi, and I wanted to show this because there are a lot of lenses that this adapts to. This has a universal mount on the inside here. It's not fixed like the SW150 is. It's just, I guess they couldn't, it's too bad they didn't do that because then it would fit anything. But you got two little threaded screws out here. These tighten down and the collar expands, and you can see that it'll fit over some of the tulip collars of wide angle lenses. So what I've brought is one of the favorite lenses in the field, which is the Rokinon Samyang Bauer 14mm for 35mm mount. Another nightmare to filter because of this huge bulbous front element and the fact that it's got a tulip filter. And so I wanted to show the fact that you can now use this setup to go right over that element or hood, tighten it down. You want to be kind of equal with this so you get equal pressure on both sides. There we go. I can now put 2 filters in front of my 14mm Rokinon, Samyang, Bauer, whichever you happen to own. This is a little dicey, so you want to watch this in the field. I mean, it's not on there lock solid. This was designed to fit over a Schneider 28mm phase 1 lens, but I found that it also works with this lens and the new Sigma 20mm 1.4, which has the same kind of tulip hood. So again, a little bit of versatility here. What I did have to do on this particular lens to make it tight was, as you can see, added a little bit of gaffer's tape around the tulip. It's just enough more added width, and that makes it fine. So again, another nice thing to be aware of if you happen to own this lens, a lot of people do. It's a nightmare to filter if you use filters. Here's a great solution. Nisi, that's N-I-S-I. They make an actual adapter, I believe, for this lens, so you don't have to do this modification. But if you own multiple lenses, it's kind of nice to know that I found that this will now work with the Sigma 1.4, 20mm, 1.4, excuse me, the Rokinon 14mm 2.8, and of course it's designed to work on the phase 1 28mm. This takes standard 2mm thread, 2mm glass filters or resin. It has 3 slots, and you can remove one if you want, if you figure you're sticking out too far with the 3rd slot. They're screw mounted just like all the leads. You would literally just unscrew, take off one element, just like you do on the leads. You know, you can put up to 3 on the lead also. So it's nice they give you the 3. I'll end up taking one off of this because I have no need for 3 at any time. That's all I've really got today. You can read more about my stuff at photosofarkansas.com. It's my website. My blog is Paul Caldwell Photography. I appreciate you taking some time to look at this, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I have used all this personally in the field. I own every piece of this equipment. I do not. I would love to be sponsored by a company, but it hadn't happened, and so I have to make purchases for all of this. But I think significantly, this device working on all this glass, especially these wider lenses with the new rings that are available from Lee, is a huge advance forward for photographers who use wide-angle lenses. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video.